Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Bree, excited to be here again.
Me too. So last week we did a Materia Medica Monday, or a couple weeks ago, our last podcast, I should say. So today we are going to talk about the topic of LM potencies.
Yeah, LM
Mhm.
potencies.
We get this question a lot. I think people know about them in our classes.
Yeah.
So we don't have an overwhelming amount of information, but we did want to cover what we do know and answer some basic things to hopefully give you guys somewhere to start.
Yeah. So I wanted to do this one because we, like you said, we get all the questions, but I'm not an expert on LM potencies because I don't use them hardly ever. But what I do want to share is my notes that I have on LM potencies, and maybe it would prompt you to at least dig a little deeper if you want to know more. So I'll start with, there are 4 potency ranges. There's the mother tincture, which is the herbal preparation. And there are material doses, actual molecules in this herbal preparation, right? So the herbal medicine is the whole form of, it's where the remedy starts. So the mother tincture, the herbal preparation, is not homeopathic. It's not a homeopathic preparation. Then there's the decimal, the ratio of 1 to 10. And so often, like the X potencies are in the decimal range. And there are still some there's still some molecules left of the original substance left in some of the lower X potencies, up to 12. So at around 12X, it starts to, there's no more molecules left of the original substance. And then the centesimal dose is the most frequently used, and that's your C potencies. So like, your 200C or 30C, most people know about those. And there's definitely no molecules left in those potencies. And then your LM potency that we're going to talk about tonight, let me back up to the centesimal is 1 to 100. The ratio is 1 to 100. 1 drop of the material dose into 100 drops of alcohol water solution. Backing up to the decimal, the X potencies is 1 drop of the material dose into 10 drops of the water alcohol solution. And then when you get to the LMs, it's 1 drop of the material dose into 50,000 drops of a water alcohol solution. So it's highly diluted. And Hahnemann did this his entire life. So he left his practice as a physician. He was a German physician. He didn't like how the medicines that he was using, he didn't like what those medicines were doing, and the procedures. So the surgeries, the medicines, the interventions that they had available to them were very harsh and they were very hard on the people. They had lots of side effects, and they weren't gentle, and he was a very gentle man. So he did not like what he saw these happening to his patients. So he quit. He just left the profession. So his entire life was geared towards gentle healing. He wanted to help people in a gentle way. So the LM potency was the last potency that he developed, because he was still looking for that extremely gentle potency that wasn't going to cause aggravations like sometimes the other potencies can do. So he really was hoping to solve the potency issue. And he attempted this for many years in the centesimal range. And he tried to get everyone to use just 30C, collect data, and then compare it at the end of the year. Then he tried to organize the optimal potencies for different remedies. And he was just a thinker. He was always thinking and working and trying to figure things out. And Hahnemann's potency range ran from tincture, the mother tincture, to 300C, and tended to do 3C jumps predominantly. So he would do like 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24, 30, Those were his prescriptions. He would do the 3C, 6C, 9C, 12C, like that. He experimented with 1C jumps, both ascending and descending, and he particularly liked 24C. Isn't that interesting?
So interesting.
So he thought sulfur 24C was its most active and potent range for many patients. So he decided it wasn't right and dropped it all completely.
After all that time.
After all that. So
He
one of
sounds like a perfectionist.
yeah,
Like
maybe
it's just not ever good enough.
right. Yeah. So one of the reasons that Hahnemann came up with the LMs was to give a formula consistent with prescribing for each case, one after the other. So the LMs run LM1 to LM30. So when you're going to use the LMs, you go in order. You start at LM1 and then you go up to LM2, 3, all the way up to LM30. So LM1, Hahnemann would do LM1 for the first month, LM2 for the second month, LM3 for the third month, and the majority of the cases, if you're on the right remedy, will ameliorate within 6 to 8 months, LM6 to LM8. So you should start, like I said, with LM1 and then progress into LM2. And you don't have to do it by month like Hahnemann did. Generally, we're looking for the case is improving and then there's no more. There's like a stopping point. There's no more improvement, then go up to the next potency. So when you go back down, it's good again, and it works. So you can do that. You can go up and down. LMs can be used for anything, not just mental emotional. So they can be used for physical conditions also. So you can change almost always from whatever potency you're giving last to LMs, and if it's appropriate. So if you've been given any of the centesimals or the decimals, you can go to an LM just right away. Like you don't have to, worry about switching.
Or you don't have to work your way all the way up through like 3, 6, 12, 30.
That's
You
right.
can just do LMs.
That's right. That's right. So how Hahnemann prepared the LMs. So in the organon, and this is the organon, and I know if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't. It's called the organon. It's called Organon of the Medical Art by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, edited and annotated by Wenda Brewster O'Reilly, PhD. That edited and the annotation, really, you can't, to read the organon in its original form would be almost impossible these days with our limited knowledge of what they meant back then. So the annotation changes it to modern terminology.
Okay.
So
and that's the 6th edition did the annotation?
That's right. This is the 6th edition. And so in chapter 10 of this book is where he talks about the preparation of medicines. So listen, y'all could go here and learn how to prepare homeopathic medicines. It's in the organon. Okay. So what we're talking about here is in paragraph is another word for aphorism. So aphorism 270 of the organon, 6th edition. Let me first say there are no LM potencies in the 5th edition. So here's just a funny side note. There are some homeopaths who, I believe Hahnemann passed away while he was still writing the 6th edition. So the 5th edition was a complete edition, right? He was done with that. He moved on. He started writing the 6th, and then he died at some point while he was writing the 6th. So some homeopaths say, I'm not going to use the 6th because it's not complete, and they only use the 5th. Well, the people who are using the 5th, there's no LMs in the 5th edition.
Okay.
LMs came at the end of his life. That's when he started developing the LMs, and that's the 6th edition. So, all of Kent's, so James Tyler Kent all of his references to the Organon reference the 5th edition. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or good or bad. I'm just.
But that is good to know if it's a different edition, so you know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The crucial difference between the 5th and the 6th edition is that Hahnemann went from 1 dose of a medium range centesimal, wait and see, to doses daily of LMs. Completely radical change of his potency application in his clinic.
So that's almost like a classical approach, right? 1 dose of a medium range, which is what, like 30 to 200 or 12 to 200-ish.
Yep.
And then you take 1 dose and just wait. And then his 6th edition, he's giving this remedy daily.
Yeah, he was like, boom, let's go for it. But in LMs.
Yes,
So,
right.
Yeah, but so, and I've heard homeopaths say, I'm a 5th edition homeopath. And what they're really saying is they are strictly classical. They're doing it like he did back then, not like he was doing it in the 6th edition.
But LM would be similar to our, like the practical approach, where you're giving these daily. I mean, I know the potencies are different,
Right.
but the mindset of giving them more often until you're seeing a lot of progress, and then you move on.
Yep. So he was dosing a lot more frequently. So it explains in the Organon how to make an LM, and I'm just going to leave that for you to look at if you want to. You can go and read. I don't think my listeners don't usually ask me, how do you make an LM? The question usually is, what is it? When would I use it? Why would I use it? That's what we want to answer here. But get the book if you want to learn how to make an LM potency.
Okay, well, and I know to answer one of those questions, the reason you would use them, or what we often hear, is because they're slow and gentle acting.
Yes.
So it makes sense why when he's using these often, like going from a classical approach to this, given his mindset you mentioned is to avoid aggravations. So there are individuals who are sensitive to LMs also, and they do aggravate, but that's much more rare. And the majority of cases, LMs are slow but effective, and they still work, but slower and without as many aggravations.
Yeah.
So medium and high centesimals, like our 200C, 1M, 10M, obviously work quicker. I shouldn't say obviously, it's not always the case, but work more quickly, but can or have the potential to aggravate.
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the super sensitive people, now I'm thinking of another name. Every time we talk about remedies and things, I think of people. And so the super sensitive people who aggravate on every remedy, that's when I use LMs.
Well, and it's interesting because you're sensitive to remedies, I would say, but you don't aggravate.
I can, but I don't.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sensitive. I would aggravate if I took like a Banerjee protocol 200C twice a day long term. Yeah, I would get some.
Yeah. And another time we often, I wouldn't say we suggest it. I don't know that we've ever suggested it, but people ask about like lactose intolerance or the sugar in the little pellets, which is very minimal. But if they're very, for whatever reason, sensitive, maybe not even to the remedy, but to like if it's in a lactose tablet or something, and they can't water dose. That's what I'm trying to say, because we'll first say try water dosing. But I know we've mentioned the LM potencies, if they're sensitive to those, or is that something totally different?
I think it is totally different. So if you are very sensitive to lactose and all that, then put it in water. Yes, you can water dose it, reduce that sensitivity, but I wouldn't go to LM because you're sensitive. But I believe what I want to really make clear is that the LM potencies are liquid. So I don't think we've said that yet tonight.
Yes, that is probably really good to say. Yeah, you're right. So these are all liquid, but they're like a tincture form, right? They're 40% alcohol? It's not like up to, it's not like 80% or medicating potency level, but I think earlier when I was reading it had said 40%.
Okay, yeah.
So they also don't like that's not as long of a shelf life as a medicating potency or something like that would be.
That's right. So medicated potency lasts forever, except for it can evaporate because it's so high in
Evaporate.
alcohol.
Yeah.
And then the 20% alcohol would have like a year shelf life. So I'm thinking that the 40% alcohol maybe would have longer, possibly. Even the 20% alcohol, let's just say you make a 200C in a liquid. You do 20% alcohol, 80% water, and I have instructions on that on my YouTube channel, how to make a water dose. And so, that I've had those last for 3 years before.
Yeah.
Supposedly it expires in a year, but don't throw it away if it's still working. So, with 40% alcohol, maybe it would last longer.
Yeah, I mean, it would at least last probably long. She just got attacked by a bug.
Moth, yeah, it likes me.
Okay, so an example of maybe a time where you would use an LM is, let's say you have kidney stones that are passing. Lycopodium LM1 can take days and days and days, a significant amount of time, where Lycopodium 1M may take just a couple of days. So still very painful, but 1Ms tend to work faster than LMs. So Hahnemann wasn't using these often in acutes.
Right.
This was chronic. So in acutes, he's probably, I don't know what he used, but more like a 30C, 200C, 1M. If they're ongoing cases of eczema or asthma, just daily chronic disease showing up, LMs aren't quite as intense as centesimals, so they can get there just as effectively over a long period of time, but not as quick as you could get there. So expect like a good 6 months maybe to get to the other side.
Yeah, so we're not using an LM in a migraine. Even
Right.
if you're a sensitive person, if you're very dizzy, migraine, whatever, bad cough, and you're very sensitive to remedies, don't think, I still wouldn't use an LM in those cases.
Okay. So any remedy can be prepared this way. They can all be made into an LMs, just like, I know sometimes we get that cell salt question. Cell salts can be in any potency. So any remedy can be made into an LM. And on paper, so if you read about how they're prepared, there's a step in there after 3C, like they make it to a 3C, and then it's diluted in 500 drops of water. So it looks like when we say the measures of the decimal scale is 1 to 10, the centesimal scale is 1 to 100, the LM scale is 1 to 50,000, it looks like it's this huge difference, but because there's that big jump, it's just prepared so differently that it changes how that remedy is made completely. So you'll have to really read how it's prepared. I read some of it, but it really is kind of very heady. I would have to sit and probably read that a bunch of times, but just know that it's not exactly a 1 to 50,000 dilution ratio, because it's prepared very differently than the other remedies are.
Yeah. Awesome. I hope that, can you think of any other questions, Bree, that we usually get about LMs? We talked about
I think usually it's if people are sensitive, we get that. What about with children? I think I did read in these notes that he didn't give LMs to kids because they're the liquid, the 40% alcohol
content.
Yeah. So, I don't know that it's really dangerous, but
yeah, I think you can just, because what are you taking? A few
like
drops.
5 drops.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you could decide on your own if it's okay for your child.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I hope that really helps people with LMs, helps them to at least get a beginning understanding, and then you can maybe do some more research if you have more questions, or um, you know, make a comment here if you're able to, in the YouTube video, you can make comments. So if I can answer the questions, I will. And thanks for talking through LM potencies with me, Bree. We'll see you guys next time.